It's morphin' time!
Hello, this is Soundout here, and welcome to a brand new tier list. I thought since Spider-Man No Way Home is out today in most regions, let's rank the Spider-Man movies. Excluding No Way Home because I'm filming this the Monday prior and, you know, all that. But I thought, let's rank all the Spider-Man movies up to this point. And this is similar to how I did the MCU tier list just recently. So I thought, you know what, let's do it. I actually did rewatch all 10 of these movies prior to doing this video, so what better time than now? So we're doing this a little different than normal tier list stuff because there's only 10. It's not like 70 like that Kaiju one. I'm going to try to aim to make the tier list a little shorter. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, let's get to it. So this is going to be all the Spider-Man movies plus Venoms, because the Venom movies are still in the Spider-Man Sony universe thing. They're considered connected by the nature of they are Spider-Man characters. So that's all I got on that. But justifications of what I'm doing aside, let's get to the tier list. So starting off, I've seen all these movies before. Watched most of them in theaters. I think almost all of them I saw in theaters, if not all of them. So this is spanning about 20 years. I feel aged. I was 7 when Spider-Man 1 came out, and it's got its 20th anniversary next year. So that's fun. But yeah, so I think that rewatching them, just in a broad sense, I still really enjoy all of the movies. But there are some things I notice now that I didn't notice when they came out, and I'd like to share them in this video. So let's start off with Spider-Man 2002. So this is the first Sam Raimi directed, Tobey Maguire starring Spider-Man movie. And this movie, I think, has not aged as well. When I was watching it this time, I noticed there was a massive problem with the movie, and that's the fact that Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker is a creep. A total, absolute 100% creep. And that's a problem because he's the main character. You're supposed to be rooting for him. He's supposed to be the hero to save the city. Yet he stalks MJ, preys on her constantly, is never honest with her, and is emotionally devastating by the end. Yeah, so I'm like, here's the other part of it. There's also a dumb love triangle plot, which I think love triangle plots are the dumbest things to ever exist. They're just there to create drama, but they aren't interesting because we all know how they end up anyways. So in terms of that, that aspect of the movie I don't think has worked as well. That being said, Willem Dafoe is Green Goblin, because I think that the entire movie is saved by Willem Dafoe playing Norman Osborn, Green Goblin, and, you know, that's kind of just where I'm at. I think that the rest of the movie is well shot, well made, but Peter Parker is uncomfortable to watch, and Mary Jane is also not a great person. They really are the worst for each other. But we'll get into that more in a minute. So when I'm ranking these on my wonderful scale of spectacular, amazing, ultimate, sensational, friendly neighborhood, I was being really cute with these. I would say that Spider-Man 2002 is going to go in the sensational tier. And like I said, I don't hate any of these movies. I actually really like pretty much all of them, and I still enjoyed watching it, but it doesn't stack up as well as I think some others. So speaking of Spider-Man 2, which is almost universally regarded as the best of the trilogy, I think it improves upon a lot of the problems of the first one, mostly because it decides the love triangle plot is not worth pursuing, which was a good choice. Because honestly, Peter and MJ trying to build a relationship, I think that's more interesting. That being said, they're both horrible for each other and emotionally destructive and are a horrible fit for a couple, but we won't get into that too much, I guess. The movie, of course, is once again saved by its villain, because Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus as Octavius is one of the top tier performances, I think, ever. And a lot of the action sequences in this movie are incredible. I especially love the way that, you know, with Doc Ock especially, that's a character you couldn't do before the era of CGI. And I love the way that they mixed in the elements of, like, what if, you know, Spider-Man having to dodge all of the arms, you know, things falling. The train sequence is incredible. In fact, I actually also like the ending of the first movie with whenever you have like the citizens in New York helping Spider-Man, always good stuff. And this I think does it even better. And, overall, I think that it turns out as a much better Spider-Man movie than Spider-Man 1 was, by a large margin. So actually, I really like this one. It's going to go into the amazing tier. I know some people may rank it higher, but this is just, again, personal opinion, so that's just where it's going. Spider-Man 3. The hype for this movie was real. I remember that. 2007 was a wild time. So the problem with this movie is that it crams in too many villains, and I actually think it should have, I think it still works with Harry Osborn as Green Goblin, Sandman as like kind of your sympathetic villain, but Venom is just really shoved into the movie, huh? I think that if they just stuck to Black Suit Spider-Man, that would have been more interesting, but shoving Venom in there was too much. Also, speaking of love triangles, this thing becomes a whole damn pentagon because you got, they throw in Gwen Stacy. For some reason, they bring back the Harry Osborn side of the love triangle for some reason, and Peter and MJ continue to be the worst people to each other. Legitimately, by the end of this, I start to ask the question, why are they supposed to be rooting for them to get together? Because they literally bring out the worst in each other. They're not a good fit. And what's interesting about this movie is that, like, it tries to frame it that, like, Peter Parker becomes a total jerk when he puts the black suit on, but he was a total jerk prior. It just amplified it and made him more confident about it. There's especially, like, earlier scenes in the film where he's like, oh, I'm Spider-Man, people love me now. MJ, your problems aren't that bad, you'll get over it. And MJ's just like, I got fired from, like, Broadway, and now I'm not ever going to work again here because this industry's evil. And Peter Parker's like, I don't care, you'll be fine, because I was fine. And that annoys the crap out of me. I actually kind of prefer the way the editor's cut tweaked the ending slightly on this one to make it seem like Peter and MJ don't actually get back together, because they should not be together. They are a terrible couple. Now, once again, saved by its villains because Thomas Hayden Church does a really nice job as Sandman. And in fact, the CGI work in the movie, honestly, somehow amazingly makes a pile of sand make me feel sad in his origin scene. So, honestly, while it's not great, I don't know if it's the worst, but it's still going to go in the friendly neighborhood tier because if we had more Sandman and less Love Pentagon stuff, and Pentagon, by the way, because somehow Venom factors into that and the symbiote is, like, in love with Peter Parker, and, Eddie Brock prays to God to kill Peter Parker, and it's bizarre. This movie is weird. This movie is incredibly weird. It's sort of all over the place. But you know what? End of the day, it's just the lowest at the moment. But we'll get more into other ones later, I guess. Actually, I'm looking ahead. I'm like, it might be the lowest, but 5 years go by. Sony's like, you know what? We need a new Spider-Man. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. Me as, what was it? 2007, I was 12. 2014, I was... Wait, no, that's not right. 2007? Was it 7 and then 4? No, it's 4. 2012 was when Amazing Spider... So 5 years later, 2012, I was in high school, distinctively in high school. And here comes a movie about a high school Spider-Man. The Amazing Spider-Man, I think more people like this one than I find. I think there was a lot of pushback from this because it wasn't the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, but I actually really like it. So with Amazing Spider-Man, I find that the aspect of it that makes it better than the Sam Raimi directed trilogy versus the Mark Webb directed Amazing Spider-Man films, the Sam Raimi trilogy goes very comic booky, which I really like, but then it has like really bad romance tropes like love triangles. So I kind of like appreciate Amazing Spider-Man going, hey, let's have a romance between two characters that isn't a love triangle, isn't built on lies, isn't emotionally abusive. And, honestly, Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy in this universe work better than Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy in any universe. So the thing is that, like, while I think that the movie spends less, it takes the focus away from the superhero stuff. I mean, there is still a giant lizard running around New York, and it's great. But it does focus in on the relationship of Peter and Gwen, And then also just Peter Parker as, kind of this introverted high school super genius who doesn't know how to interact with people and sort of is kind of awkwardly going through things, has abandonment issues, doesn't really trust anybody, but also doesn't want to like open himself up. And honestly, I can relate to a bunch of that. Aside from the abandonment issues, I don't really have that. But I like the aspect of bringing in his parents because, that's something that should haunt Peter Parker because his parents like left him, and they really amp up the drama in this. So he kind of ends up latching on to the people he loves and doesn't want to let them go. And I actually kind of like Uncle Ben's death in this a little bit more because it's less, the trope of adopted child of you're not my real father and more of a you don't know what I'm going through. Why are you quoting my father when he left me? And I think that like the actual like emotional drama resonates a lot better. But that may not be everybody's cup of tea because it feels more like a drama film than a superhero film. So I really like that, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a great action movie. Though there is really great action sequences. So anyways, Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone make this movie totally worth it. So any other things aside from it? I know I have an amazing tier as the second tier, but Amazing Spider-Man's going in spectacular because I actually think that more people should revisit the movie because I think that if you take it with the aspect of, it's more of a drama than a, superhero film, it's actually pretty good. It's actually kind of a breath of fresh air, honestly, compared to everything else in the landscape. So there's that. Now, going forward on this, Amazing Spider-Man 2 tries to carry forward all the good elements of Amazing Spider-Man, but Sony was like, set up a Sinister Six movie, get this all done, here's your checklist of things, and it feels like that. Boy, does it feel like we're just checklisting a Sinister Six movie. And I think part of my problem with that is that it sort of takes the focus away from Peter and Gwen, and you know what? That was a mistake, because every time Peter and Gwen are on screen, I'm super invested, but anytime they're not, I don't really care. And I think they made Electro 2 over the top in the awkward, nerdy person who hyperfixates on Spider-Man and then, goes crazy because superpowers. I think they overdid it to the point where it was like, okay, you start feeling for the guy, but then he's just so over the edge that he stops being relatable. There is, why do we shove Rhino into this? There is the ending, and honestly, the ending still gets me. For those that don't know, I'm not going to spoil it, but the ending, like, half hour of the film, it feels sort of tacked on, but I will give all credit to Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone for breaking my damn heart. So, it still gets me years later. This was, 2014, so it's been 6 years. Still hurts. 6 years? 7 years. It's been 7 years, but it's still I still feel emotions at that. And I honestly think it was, it had a lot of great ideas, and then it was kind of muddled by Sony going, shove more in this movie, and that is the problem with it. I want an editor's cut that cuts out all the Sinister Six setup and just kind of gets to the point. But with all that said, it still has absolutely the best soundtrack for a Spider-Man movie, period. Because it is a score that is elevated beyond just movie score. It's, mixing in so many genres of music into a beautiful thing that I'm still listening to all these years later, which I can't say with the others. So, with all that said, it's not good enough to rank it high, even if I do really like a lot of the character work. So it's going sensational, just below the first. See, because the thing is, I like the romance stuff better in this than in the first Spider-Man, but Willem Dafoe adds 5 bonus points. All right, so let's talk Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I just ranked this in my MCU tier list, and, I don't remember where I ranked it, because all these things are a blur at some point. And like I said, I was going to rank the 2 Spider-Man movies based on their placement in Spider-Man movies, as opposed to just MCU movies, because I think it's actually a different case. Spider-Man Homecoming's pretty fun. I really like it, and I really think that it kind of continues forward a lot of the great things from the previous movies. So, for example, you have a great legendary actor playing a villain with Michael Keaton as Vulture. Absolutely one of the best MCU villains, but that's kind of a thing taken from the previous films because you had or especially the Sam Raimi trilogy, where they're like, hey, let's have Willem Dafoe play Green Goblin. Let's have Michael Keaton play the Vulture. It's in that same realm. It has connections to the MCU, which is great, but it still stands alone. It really feels like, they do a good job recapping Captain America Civil War and his part in that. So I think that's kind of neat, because it kind of like, you can watch it as like, oh, hey, here's a Spider-Man that lives in a world with other superheroes. With the references to with Iron Man being in it, and then also references to Captain America and other events. Honestly, I think it works pretty good. So with that being said, I do really think that in the landscape of Spider-Man movies, it's not the best, because it does tend to prefer the action over the emotion. There's plenty of emotion, and I really like a lot of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man aspects, which kind of reminds me of Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is one of the things I really liked, was that, Spider-Man there would have, like, things where he was, like, helping the fire department put fires out, or he would be, trying to talk people down instead of, just beating them up. That kind of thing where, there's the whole scene with the kid, where he helps a kid who's getting bullied. It's great. So that kind of stuff, I think, carried forward, and then Tom Holland's Spider-Man kind of adds that higher youthful energy, because he's more outgoing. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is more introverted, more to himself. Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is more awkward, trying to be more confident, but, not really good at it. And Tom Holland's Spider-Man is like bundle of energy, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to do this, why doesn't anyone trust me kind of guy. So I like the differences between the three of them. So with Spider-Man Homecoming, I think that the way that they took what they had in Civil War and then expanded upon it was great. Vulture is freaking scary, and I've never said that about the Vulture, whether it was comics, games, or whatever. And I think that overall it turns out a really nice movie. I really like the final battle sequence too. I always like it when Spider-Man's like, oh, I got help from, the Avengers, but I still got to do this on my own. I got to prove myself kind of idea. So with that in mind, I'm going to put it in the ultimate tier, only because I do think Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 go above it, just in some other aspects. But it's a really great start to a new era of Spider-Man. So that's Homecoming. Let's talk Venom. So this was funny because Venom is one of those movies that I saw the low Rotten Tomatoes score and I went, oh boy, instead of oh no. Some people see low Rotten Tomatoes scores and go, oh no, it's going to be bad. And I'm like, it just means sometimes critics don't know how to have fun. But Venom, this is kind of a funny movie because I don't think it's necessarily a great movie, like in terms of production. But it is one of those really fun movies. Like I've watched this one a lot. And what really sells it, again, when it comes to these movies, is it doesn't sell it on plot or on narrative or cinematography even. What sells it is the actors. And Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock and Venom, it's perfection. It's really amazing because Tom Hardy has spent most of his career getting put behind masks or being put in weird makeup. But this is just, average Tom Hardy look. Like he gets like kind of a normal look, but then he also gets to interact with the symbiote. And honestly, the movie does have like its tropey elements to it. It's like, oh, here's the bad guy that's almost like Venom, but not quite. And it's not Carnage because we're saving that for the sequel. And there's, some of the other aspects. But I do actually like the fact that, it's sort of, with the Spider-Man movies, there's always these moments where Peter Parker's irresponsible and it like hurts people and then he makes up for it. And they kind of sort of did that with Eddie Brock, where he makes a mistake and he tries to make up for it, but he can't because it's such a horrible mistake. And I think that's the difference between Spider-Man and Venom. They also go with the anti-hero angle, which I think is great. And I'm glad that the movie didn't shy away from violence. It's a PG-13. You can get away with more than you think, and people get eaten. It's great. So Venom is a fun time. It's a fun movie. I really enjoy it. I can't say it's like the great cinema of all time, but you know what? It's pretty amazing. I really do like Venom a lot. And I like that they have similarities. Like, again, with Venom, just in his general look, is always like he's kind of similar to Spider-Man. Both worked at the Daily Bugle. Comics-wise, they both worked at the Daily Bugle. They were rivals. But in the movies, I kind of like that we have, Eddie Brock is like, Peter Parker and Eddie Brock screw things up, but Peter Parker screws things up a little bit and can fix it. Eddie Brock screws things up completely, and that is an interesting dynamic. So now we get to the animated film, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which Sony did a gamble on this one, because You're already running a trilogy of Spider-Man movies with Tom Holland, working with Disney. You're already doing Venom movies. How far can you go with the Spider-Man brand? I mean, for example here, we had like a Spider-Man movie every other year with the Raimi trilogy. Then we took 5 years off. Then it was every other year for Andrew Garfield. Then, almost two years later, we got Civil War, and then Spider-Man's just been back to back to back. We got 2 movies in 2018, Venom and Into the Spider-Verse, which I think is an interesting business model. But Into the Spider-Verse is quintessentially everything about Spider-Man that's great. You have a story focused on Miles Morales, which is amazing because it's about damn time he gets a movie. And there's not much else I can really say when this thing is like, best animated picture at the Academy Awards for 2018's movies. It's universally loved. I don't really know what else to add to the conversation. I watched it again. It still holds up. There is absolutely nothing there's nothing wrong with this movie. It's in fact pretty much near perfection. And I'm so excited the sequel's happening as a 2-parter and getting an IMAX treatment, because that feels like live action superhero movies get that treatment and animated movies never get, that much love. And I mean, there's no doubt about it. Into the Spider-Verse is just top of spectacular. I don't even know how to articulate it. It's just, it captures the essence of the character so well. And I love the way that it brings in 5 Spider-Mans from 5 different universes, but then also gives them all the aspects. And it's like you have that unifying sense of who Spider-Man is. And I love the idea of like anyone can wear the mask. And Miles Morales is just portrayed so well here. It's amazing. So, or it's spectacular, I should say. But, with all that said, it's just going up to the top. It's hard to articulate how good that movie is because it's really dang good. All right, next up, Spider-Man Far From Home. This was the second Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, and I actually think this one's better than Homecoming. It's honestly, I think that the European vacation kind of idea was neat because it kind of took him out of his element a bit. And Mysterio is in the movie, and Mysterio is always great. Mysterio is always one of my favorite like Spider-Man villains. Good stuff, because I love the illusion aspect of it. But Spider-Man Far From Home, it plays with stuff. It's actually sets up No Way Home more than people think, because I watched it again. I was like, oh, hey, that's going to, maybe that, yeah. So, with Far From Home, I think that it does what Homecoming did, where it does focus on friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, because Peter Parker just wants to go on vacation. And I like that aspect that, like, all right, he went and fought Thanos with everybody, but he's just still a high school student that just wants to go on vacation with his friends and not worry about all this extra stuff. And I think that's a really good element. And then also Peter's irresponsibility leads to bad things, but he's able to fix it. And I think that's also kind of an aspect. It's what makes Peter Parker so relatable, is that he screws stuff up, but he knows how to fix it. And I think that's what kind of is the part of the character that inspires people. So with that said, I think that Far From Home does a lot of what Homecoming did, but better. But I do kind of miss the, hey, we're trying to save, a neighborhood in New York kind of idea, like in Homecoming. But with that being said, I'm going to put Far From Home up in the amazing tier, just below Venom. And that's because it really does some great stuff. It really is a solid movie. And a very shocking ending. I'm still not over that ending. That was like a moment burned into the memories of many. So then wrapping this up, we have our last movie we're talking about, since No Way Home is coming out today. Haven't seen it yet. This is just general. Don't post spoilers in my comments for a movie that just is coming out. I'm not even going to see it for 2 more days. So be nice and don't post anything. But anyways, so let's talk about the last movie that's on the list. I'm not going to give spoilers on this one. Venom, Let There Be Carnage. This came out on Blu-ray like 3 days ago. So if you haven't seen it, it's out in a lot of places. But anyways, Venom, Let There Be Carnage was actually pretty cool. Because with Venom, I really liked it. And I was like, cool, I want more. And Venom, Let There Be Carnage was like, here, 90 more minutes of Venom. And I'm going to take it. And some people complain about the runtime, but honestly, I was like, you know what? There are parts of the first Venom that drag with its 2-hour runtime. So, yeah, tighten it up. And yeah, what a nice, refreshing movie. It's funny because I saw this like right before I saw Eternals, and Eternals was a lot longer and a lot more drawn drawn out. Venom, Let There Be Carnage is like boom, 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 boom. Things happen, but you don't lose character. Like there's so much character work with Eddie and Venom in particular. I love it. I really do. It really was kind of like, you know, it wasn't like, oh, we gotta like, you know, make up for the difference. It's like, no, it just leaned into Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock and Venom, and his dynamic with Venom is what makes these movies great, and it just worked. And I really, really like it, and it apparently made a lot of money, so hopefully we'll get a third movie. So I just, you know, without going like super heavy into spoilers, which I don't want to do because it's very recent, Let There Be Carnage, I think, excels at being better than the first movie. And I think it's going to be better than Spider-Man 2. And I'll only say that because Let There Be Carnage is just so tight and consistent. Like, I already know at that 90-minute runtime I'm going to be watching this thing, like, multiple times. Be like, oh, I want to watch something for, like, an hour and a half. What do I want to put on? Oh, let me put on Venom. You know, because it's really fun. But if you didn't like the first Venom, you're not going to like Let There Be Carnage. Just FYI. Because they are very much two... It's funny. Two different directors... but yet the same style movie. And I actually like that, because sometimes when you get multiple directors on a franchise, you get a disjointedness where like one director wants to do things their own way. But I feel like Andy Serkis came in and looked at what worked in the first Venom, looked at what didn't, and then just tightened it all together. And I was like, here you go. And I was like, thank you, Andy Serkis. I appreciate you. So that's the list. I think that I'm pretty happy with the rankings. I know I said I liked a lot of these, and I really did rank like 4 of them in the amazing tier. I really enjoyed watching the movies again, and, you know, going through it, yeah, let's, you know, from the bottom, Spider-Man 3, then Amazing Spider-Man 2, then, it's funny, like, Amazing Spider-Man 2 hits me emotionally, but I can't rank it that high because of the other half of the movie. Spider-Man, Homecoming is the ultimate tier, solo ultimate tier movie. Amazing is Far From Home, Venom, Spider-Man 2, Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And that's also because, like, I could just watch any of those anytime. And then Amazing Spider-Man and Into the Spider-Verse up top. Because I think those are the best and also the ones I really love. And then the Amazing tier is just, like, the ones I really like. And then the others you know, as I've ranked them. That's the whole point of the ranking. I don't know why I'm describing that exactly. But I hope you enjoyed this. I hope... You know, if you're out there and you're going to get to see No Way Home this weekend, I hope you stay spoiler-free. It is tricky out there on the internet, and I hope that you're able to enjoy the movie as much as possible without getting too much spoiled to you by people who post just spoilers without any warning or labels or anything like that. I'm very excited to see it myself, so I will probably not report back on that for a bit, but we may come back and do another Spider-Man tier list next year, since we'll have No Way Home and Morbius, and Across the Spider-Verse Part 1 to talk about in a year from now. But that is all. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, hit subscribe, and the notification bell to keep up with future uploads. So if you did enjoy this, hit subscribe, notification bell. Let me know in the comments what your favorite Spider-Man movie is. Let's talk all positive. Let's not talk No Way Home. That's not the kind of video we do that on. And also check out HeroClub at hero-club.com for Marvel news and more. And my awesome graphic designer on Twitter at darkclass643, who made this awesome new tier list logo you see here. And until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.